So the Las Vegas Raiders on the offensive side of the football have the biggest game of the season against the Kansas City Chiefs. This was the most explosive we had seen our past game. At the same time, the defense had a phenomenal game. And we're going to talk about what we saw from this Las Vegas Raiders team. Watching the tape of both the offense and the defense side of the football, to me, the Raiders definitely did some things right. And a lot of it really came from the scheme aspect of it. You know, one of the things I noticed right away with this game versus the last two games on the offense side of the football was the way the defense approached the Las Vegas Raiders offense. The last two games that we played, the teams really didn't have an actual scheme where they were like, we're 100% going to try to do this specific thing. But the Chiefs came into this game and they said, we're going to take away the quick game. Last week and the week before, we did a really good job being able to pick up 4, 5, 6 yards on pretty much most passing plays. This week, the Kansas City Chiefs said, we're not going to allow that to happen, right? Aiden O'Connell's a much better passer when it comes to being within rhythm of the offense. Aiden O'Connell's going to take 3 steps. He's going to get the ball out. And the Chiefs said, we're not going to allow them to do that. In fact, the first 2 drives, the Raiders didn't have a lot of success throwing the football because the Kansas City Chiefs absolutely took that away. And a lot of these plays early on were plays where you can see that the Chiefs defense were trying to attack that. Quick game did not work, but the Raiders then decided to make their own adjustment. The first play of the second quarter, the Raiders decided, let's take a deep shot, and they hit for 43 yards to Jacoby Myers. Now, what's interesting about this is the Raiders recognized right away the Chiefs are going to play us underneath, essentially, right? So we're going to take multiple deep shots. And the Raiders ended up throwing the ball for like 250 yards on literally 7 plays, right? There's 7 deep design shots that they ultimately had, and they were able to hit on a couple of these. But before we get into all of those different plays, I want to talk a little bit about this Jacoby Myers play specifically. So one of the big issues I had with Wilkins coming in was Wilkins didn't read defenses. He didn't design concepts to attack specific defenses. And with Scott Turner, we're already seeing that that's not what he does as an offensive coordinator. There's a night and day difference. Most of us can agree to that, right? But I think the thing with Scott Turner that's different is Scott Turner understands tendencies. So one of the things with the Kansas City Chiefs defensive scheme is it's an elite scheme, right? I think most people would agree with that they run an elite scheme on that side of the football. But what makes it elite is the fact that these guys are able to mix coverages. These guys are able to show so many different things. They'll blitz you like crazy as well, right? So this is a team that's going to get after the quarterback. And from a scheme perspective, the Raiders took advantage of that a little bit. So on this play to Jacoby Myers, one of the things you're going to see right away is that the Raiders came out. Keep in mind, this was a 3rd and 3. So the Chiefs just expected a quick pass, right? 4, 5, 6 yards. The Chiefs did not expect the Raiders to take a shot over the top. So the Raiders came out in a 2-by-2 tight look. Essentially, that's going to indicate that they might be running some sort of sticks concepts, or they might be running some sort of dragging or line concepts, which are basically a part of the quick game. And the Raiders quickly shifted out Jacoby Myers. And the second they did that, it showed that the defense was actually in a cover 4 defense. So right away, the Raiders knew how they could attack cover 4. Aiden O'Connell gives Jacoby Myers the nod, and you know that they're going to take this shot regardless of what the outcome is. And Aiden O'Connell stuck with it, and he gave Jacoby Myers a chance. Myers ended up beating that cornerback. And to me, it was a great thing to watch on tape because you can see that Scott Turner understanding on 3rd and 3 what the Chiefs are going to do out there on the defense side of the football. You know, he quickly puts the guy into motion. He quickly realizes what's about to happen. Aiden O'Connell has a great job being able to read that and see it. And then the Raiders are able to take advantage of that. You know, to me, just watching that on tape is very, very, very beautiful. Because with Luke Jackson, we didn't do things like this, right? And the thing with Scott Turner is we had already seen the improvements over the last 2 weeks, right? We've been talking about it. Now, unfortunately for the Raiders, Gardner Minshew's not that good of a quarterback, right? I think the one thing Gardner Minshew does better than Aiden O'Connell is he creates plays, but Aiden O'Connell has a better arm. And we had talked about this multiple times. And with that, Aiden O'Connell's able to stay within rhythm. He's able to take those shots downfield. And the Chiefs continue to play underneath. And it was kind of surprising because as the game went on, they still continued to stay with that approach. And the Raiders ended up hitting multiple big plays against the Kansas City Chiefs. There was another play that Scott Turner designed. It was the 29-yard one-handed catch by Brock Bowers. Once again, the Chiefs are going to come out in a match concept. You can tell it's matched because you can tell there's 4 guys essentially covering 3 guys. So what that means is if the Raiders want to take a shot with Brock Bowers, they just got to design it in a way that forces the cornerback and linebacker to ultimately make a switch. And when that switch happens, as long as you send a second route to the inside, it means you're going to have one-on-one opportunities with Brock Bowers, as long as Brock Bowers is not the outside guy, right? In this instance, Brock Bowers is the guy in the middle. He's lined up on the line of scrimmage. You're going to essentially draw up and give Brock Bowers that one-on-one. To me, that's elite by the offensive coordinator to be able to do that. And then at the same time, it's a really, really good job by Aiden O'Connell to recognize post-snap exactly what they kind of expected. And when it happens, he puts the ball exactly where it needs to be. To me, that right there is what the Raiders have been missing this entire season. I don't know if it's a positive that the Raiders are starting to show this now, because if we had rolled with Aiden O'Connell as well as Scott Turner as the offensive coordinator from week 1, we would have won more games from week 1 to this point. But the thing is we're also at the point where our season is over. We're 2-10, and we're going to probably have a top 5 pick. And even if we win some games here in the back, and we'll still have a top 10 pick. And I think one of the things that I wanted to see coming into this game was Aiden O'Connell run the Scott Turner offense, and it looked really, really, really good, right? Like I can, and I'm not the type of person, I've criticized Aiden O'Connell. I am not the type of person that'll continue to criticize the guy if he does well. Thayer Munford's a guy that I was very, very, very off on, right? I really did not like him coming into the season. He had a couple of good games, and I gave him credit for those games, but he also struggled, and then we criticized him for those struggles. DJ Glaze is another guy that I've criticized, but I've also given him some credit when credit's due. Gardner Minshew was the guy I expected to win the job, but I've criticized him multiple times because he can't throw the ball deep. He's not willing to play within the structure. He's oftentimes getting out of the pocket when he doesn't need to. Aiden O'Connell had a really good game, and there's just no way to look around that. And I think one of the things we've got to recognize is, I'm not saying we shouldn't draft a quarterback or we shouldn't try to get Cam Ward or Sanders. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is, why reach for a guy if you have a quarterback in Aiden O'Connell who might have a little bit of upside? To me, Aiden O'Connell does still have that one limitation, which, we'll talk about here a little bit later on. But, when it comes to actually the design element of the offense, if it's open, he's going to be able to hit it, right? Now, another thing that I don't want to have overlooked is the fact that the defense did a really good job for the Raiders. The defense, in the first 43 minutes of this game, right, the defense had 4 drives where the Chiefs drove downfield, and of those 4 drives, 3 of them ended up in field goals. That's crazy. That doesn't usually happen with the Kansas City Chiefs. And for that reason, the Chiefs didn't have a whole lot of points in that time frame. And ultimately, there was a time in this game, there's like a minute and 50 seconds left in the third quarter. The Raiders had only scored 3 points up to that point, right? So essentially the first 43, 44 minutes of the game, the Raiders have 3 points. But the Raiders did a great job sticking to what they believed in. They did a great job being able to design those shot plays, and it hit, right? Literally within 3 plays, the Raiders scored 14 points, right? So the Raiders had, the score was 3-16. The Raiders had a 33-yard pass to Brock Bowers with a minute and 50 seconds left. They got the ball back. Sincere McCormick had a nice 11-yard run. The very next play, you get another 58-yard touchdown. That 58-yard touchdown was beautiful. I mean, even the Brock Bowers touchdown before that was really, really nice. But the 58-yard pass from Aiden O'Connell to Trey Tucker was 100% Aiden O'Connell. The Brock Bowers touchdown right before that, it was a nicely designed concept, right? The Raiders kind of designed it in a way where if the Chiefs did come out in a cover 4 match defense, what the Chiefs are notoriously known to run, as long as the guys ran their routes and they stuck with that defense, they did the rules that they were supposed to do, Brock Bowers would have one-on-one coverage, and he did, right? And Aiden O'Connell trusted it. In fact, in my opinion, if you're a quarterback and you see this right here, you're not throwing this over the top, but the fact that you had a wide receiver running an out, you had another receiver running an in-breaking route, which would hold the safety, Aiden O'Connell trusted that enough to put the ball in a place where Brock Bowers could potentially make it, and he trusted that that post safety and that corner were not going to take away Brock Bowers, right? He trusted what he saw pre-snap. He trusted that the offensive design would hold those guys, and the 33-yard pass was ultimately a really, really good design and obviously execution. But the 58-yard touchdown pass was just different, right? That was all Aiden O'Connell. The pocket's breaking down. This guy hits it for 58 yards. And he put the ball out there before Trey Tucker even beat the corner. He put it out there before Trey Tucker essentially was even open, right? He just threw it out there, and Trey Tucker went underneath it, and he caught the pass. So that was a really, really good job by Aiden O'Connell, and he took the hit. To me, I think the Raiders from the offense side of the ball did a really, really good job being able to kind of execute the offensive side. We didn't win this game, but sometimes when you watch tape, you can just tell that it's just better, right? It looks better. And I think another big part of the Raiders looking better was the fact that Sincere McCormick had a couple of really nice runs. And Amir Abdullah did as well, right? Let's not overlook the fact that Abdullah still averaged almost 4 yards per attempt. Together, those guys averaged, I think, like 4.7 yards per attempt. They had over 100 yards. And it was only like 20 touches. So, to me, those guys did a really, really good job being able to kind of, you know, with the limited opportunities that they touch the ball, they're able to pick up yards. And you can never overlook the fact that it's very important for, an offense to, especially the Raiders, right? We're not a run first team. Regardless of how much Antonio Pierce wanted to say that at the beginning of the season, we're not a run first team. Our weapons are all pass catchers, right? Brock Bowers, Kobe Myers, Trey Tucker, DJ Turner has kind of become a weapon for us as well a little bit. These guys are pass catchers. And at the same time, our offensive line is finally kind of coming together. And I do think the run has been a lot better the past 2 to 3 weeks. And I think a big part of that is because this offensive line unit is also the best unit we've had. Putting Jackson Powers Johnson at center has been really, really good for the Raiders. Dylan Parham, I'm not sold on him, but I think at right guard, he's okay, right? He's a guard at the end of the day. You can always upgrade, but you don't have to upgrade unless you really want to. Jordan Meredith's another guy who's been pretty good. You probably would want to upgrade that position. Left tackle's really solid. And then, of course, DJ Glaze has looked really solid over the past couple of weeks. Now, he did have some losing snaps against the Chiefs, but as a rookie, he's been very solid for the Raiders. This unit is the best unit we've had. And because of that, we're able to have success running the football. I also think that we're running a lot more power-based concepts, so that's also allowing us to have success because power is a lot easier to block than zone. With zone, it's a lot more communication. And then with zone, you also have to have those running backs that are able to have that vision. And they're able to have that like stop-start quickness, right? They can realize there's nothing to the left. They can change direction, come back to the right, quickly pick that speed up and actually hit it. Versus power, you know where the lane's going to be, right? It's a lot tighter in terms of the vision. You'll make 1 or 2 cutbacks. It's not even cutbacks, but it's 1 or 2 gaps, right? It's usually gaps right next to each other. Zone, it's like you can hit the left gap to the left side of the tackle versus to the inside of the right tackle, right? So it's like a lot wider in the cuts. Regardless, the Raiders are having success, right? They're running the football. They're doing a great job passing. I like what I saw from Aiden O'Connell. I want to see this guy next week against the Buccaneers and then the Falcons as well. I want to see what this guy can do against those teams because I do think, it is easier to play your divisional opponent, right? I think most of us can agree with that divisional opponents across the league, right? If it could be the worst team in the NFL playing the best, you can still win if you're the worst team against a divisional opponent who might be the best, right? We saw the Raiders beat the Chiefs last year. We were close yesterday, and they see the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL, which I obviously don't agree with. But the Raiders, I want to see what they have, right? I want to see what Scott Turner and Aiden O'Connell can do as we go forward. Now, Aiden O'Connell, we'll still just touch on it really quickly. He'll always still have that limitation, which is he's not super, super fast, right? He isn't super quick. He's always going to have that limitation. There was a sack that he took where Chris Jones, the defensive tackle, chased him down. To me, no defensive tackle should be chasing down any quarterback, right? That is a limitation you'll always have with Aiden O'Connell. Is there ways to get around it? Absolutely, right? The offensive design just has to be on point, and you got to keep a defense honest, right? If you get too caught up in the tendencies, right? If the Raiders continue to run the same spacing concepts and it doesn't work, and when it doesn't work, they try running outside zone, that doesn't work, then they try running, X, Y, Z, whatever it is, and it's all basic stuff, then you're not going to have success as a quarterback, right? But if you continuously mix it up, the way Ben Johnson does, right? And Scott Turner did a really good job, or at least this game, and I think the first game was better than the second game he was in. But the third game was the best game, right? We had a couple of end rounds with Bowers. Tucker had one. We had a couple of screenplays as well. We did things the right way, in my opinion, this week. And we obviously attacked the defensive scheme, which was another positive. Both Aiden O'Connell, you can have success as a quarterback. Some people I saw on Twitter talking about Aiden O'Connell and said that, he's always going to be limited the same way Tua Tagovailoa is limited. When Mike McDaniel designs these quick in-breaking concepts and Tua takes one step and he gets it in there and these guys catch it, it's great. But when that stuff gets shut down, then Tua can't make plays with his legs, right? He ultimately ends up just getting sacked. And I do see that partly with Aiden O'Connell. There was another play where he took a sack. He took a 15-yard sack from the 22-yard line. And that ultimately knocked the Raiders out of field goal range. Now, we attempted the field goal, ended up missing it. To me, he's not a rookie, but it's a rookie mistake, right? You get coached out of those things. So to me, that's not an issue at all. Usually, if that happens one time, it won't happen again. Like Aiden O'Connell will never take a 15-yard sack on third down ever again, or at least it shouldn't happen, right? So there are little improvements that I want to see this guy make. He had a pass to Jakobi Meyers, which was also very, very, very off. Jakobi Meyers was running a dig, and he threw it, which was the right read, but it was too far towards the left. I'm not sure if the ball slipped or whatever. He also underthrew Jakobi Meyers on the 43-yard pass that he had, or maybe it was 48 yards. 43 yards to Jakobi Meyers. He underthrew that pass as well. Jakobi had like 4 or 5 yards on that corner. If the ball was further, he would have caught it and ran it for a touchdown. Little things that just got to get cleaned up, and I think he will, right? Sometimes it takes a quarterback 2 or 3 years to really become good. We saw guys like Jalen Hurts. We saw guys like Josh Allen really struggle. And with AOC, you have to always remember he's going to be limited with that one aspect, but maybe you can make it work. We'll see what ends up happening these final couple of weeks. And I just want to quickly give a shout out to our secondary as well, because, Patrick Graham runs an elite scheme, right? And Clavon Chasen had a great game, but it was really the secondary that allowed that defensive line to get home. To me, the Raiders secondary is one of the best secondaries in the NFL. And it's not the individual players, right? And it's never the individual players. Let's be honest. All right, Bill Belichick can have Stephon Gilmore, and Stephon Gilmore will leave, and then he'll just replace him with the next guy, right? Bill Belichick has a scheme that is elite, right? And Patrick Graham also has an elite scheme. So the Raiders have one of the best secondaries. They have a top 5 secondary, and it's not close. And again, it's not the actual individual players, it's the scheme aspect of it. Patrick Mahomes looks to the left, and he says, all right, this is what's about to happen, and the Raiders flip it. All right, there was one play specifically that comes to mind. It was a third down play, and I continue to watch it because the slot corner, and I think it was the Cameron Richardson, he gave it away that some sort of blitz is coming, right? But I'm not sure Patrick Mahomes actually saw that, right? But you're going to essentially get a what looks like a 4-on-3 situation, right? And you look at that and you say, okay, one of these guys is going to end up falling off. One of these guys are going to end up passing a guy off, right? Some sort of match concept. But the Raiders instead ended up bringing a blitz off that side, right? And the thing with that play was it was a good design. You bring the blitz. Robert Spillane even simulates pressure. He drops off as well. Although the pressure doesn't get home, but it still confuses Patrick Mahomes, right? He doesn't really know where to go with the football. And remember, in the NFL, it's not as easy as like on Madden, right? Like Madden, you just push a button and the ball goes to wherever you want it to go. In the NFL, if a quarterback's looking right, he can't just turn around and quickly throw it left, right? You have to process information as you look, right? You're looking to the right and you see what's happening. A guy might be open to the left, but you're not going to be able to get him the football because by the time you look to the left and you realize he's open and the safeties aren't, by the time you process that, you're getting sacked. It's the NFL. It's not college football. It's not high school football. You don't have the time in the NFL that you would essentially have, right? In high school or college or whatever. And we did that a lot yesterday, right? Where maybe Patrick Mahomes looks left and he expects something and the Raiders change it. Or the rules aren't exactly what they should be, right? And the Raiders do this to Patrick Mahomes. We did this even last year when we ultimately beat him, right? And he was confused. And, Mahomes always kind of struggles a little bit against the Raiders. At least in my opinion. I feel like they're always struggling a little bit. And the Raiders should have beat the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday, right? Let's just be 100% honest. The Raiders had those pass interference calls that basically gave the Kansas City Chiefs touchdowns, right? I think the first touchdown they scored was because they called the Jack Jones PI. It was a terrible PI in my personal opinion, and I'm unbiased. I would not say that that's a if it was a pass interference, I would say it's a pass interference. It was a play when Clavon Chasen jumped off sides, a third down play. We got the stop, but he was offsides, right? So that makes sense. But the pass interference was not a pass interference. Now, the second one, maybe it's a pass interference. Okay, I'm okay with that. But the first one was not, and the first one led to a touchdown. The second one, I think, only led to a field goal attempt. So the first one led to a touchdown. I thought it was a bad call. And then even the Jackson Powers-Johnson holding call, right? Jackson Powers-Johnson tossed one of their defensive linemen, and they hit him again on the ground, right? Physical, setting the tone. Gotta love that with JPJ. And they once again called it, right? They called that a hold. To me, that's not a hold. It's a terrible call. Right? People do this all the time. You're throwing a guy that's already naturally leveraged that way anyways. To me, that was a bad call as well. And then, of course, at the end of the game, I talked about this a little bit yesterday. But I went back and I watched this play over and over and over again. You know, the referee at the top on that final play where the Raiders fumbled the football, the referee at the top was doing this. That means it's a false start, right? A legal shift is like this, or it's just a different type of motion by the refs. The guy at the top was saying it's a false start. Now remember, on a false start, the play doesn't just go. You blow the whistle on a false start. And that guy off the sideline was running onto the field, which is exactly what you do on a false start. So that play was a false start 100% according to that official. And for some reason, they decided to say, hey, it was an illegal shift instead, right? Which doesn't make sense. You cannot blow the whistle. It's blown dead at the end of the day, right? Another part of that play that we got to recognize is, you know, guys aren't jumping on the pile. Guys aren't trying to rip that football away because the whistle's ultimately blown. Right, so to me, that's a really bad job by the NFL referees. So you look at the pass interferences, you look at a couple of bad calls, you look at the end of the game fumble. The Raiders should have won this game, and even more so than that, you know, that fumble play, apparently Antonio Pierce wanted to just throw the ball into the end zone or wherever, into the stands, and he wanted to waste 5 seconds by just throwing the ball away. I understand that mindset of let's just throw the ball away. I think that's a bad mindset. Why would you not instead say, let's throw a quick 4 or 5 yard slant? It's third down. Let's throw a quick 4 or 5 yard slant. Let's get up there to spike it, right? It was third down, like 3rd and 3, something like that. You would have picked the first down up. Now, you obviously couldn't take a sack, but that's something you tell your quarterback. Don't take the sack, right? Throw it away, pick up 3 or 4 yards, get up there and spike it. You would have spiked it with 3-4 seconds left. Instead, the Raiders planned to throw the ball into the end zone or throw it away to waste the clock. I disagreed with that right away, right? I think it would have made sense to try picking up 4 or 5 yards to make it an easier field goal. I think it was like 49, 48-yard field goal. Regardless of that, you know, it is what it is. I enjoyed that game yesterday because I think the Raiders showed so much upside and promise, and I think as we go forward, they'll continue to be able to do that, right? They'll continue to be able to show success. And as long as the Raiders can continue to show improvement, you know, Antonio Pierce is not going anywhere, right? And we got to find an offensive coordinator. And maybe Scott Turner could be that guy, right? He's looked really good, in my opinion, up to this point. Also, do not overlook the fact that Scott Turner will go into this offseason, if he's our offensive coordinator, and he'll take designs and elements from other teams. And in the offseason, he will reinstall the Raiders offense. He throw away the Luke Getsy BS, and he'll install his own scheme, his own system, his own calls. Maybe you add in the element that a quarterback doesn't have to throw it hot. Instead, he can change the play. Right? So there's things that Scott Turner will add in the offseason that'll make it better. The same way Ben Johnson did for the Detroit Lions. Right? So to me, you know, it's not guaranteed that AP is going to be fired. It's not guaranteed that we're also even going to get a top tier offensive coordinator. There's a chance a guy might say, you know, look at Shane Waldron. Shane Waldron's head coach with the Seahawks got fired. He took a job with the Bears, and the Bears fired him after 7-8 games because of the fact that the head coach of the Bears sucked. Right, and they fired the head coach 3-4 weeks later anyways. Shane Waldron was a good coach, and there's other coaches that kind of take that same mold where, you know, Clint Kubiak, right, with the Saints. Great offensive coordinator, but the head coach gets fired. So at the end of this season, Clint Kubiak's going to end up being an assistant coach. He's going to be a pass game coordinator again. Right, there's a chance no one's going to hire this guy as an offensive coordinator. So, you know, to me, the Raiders got to figure it out, and I think we're seeing a lot of upside. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, consider subscribing, and I will see you guys next time with another video.